Well, Andre Gonzalez and R.J. Clark, welcome to the Rocky Mountain Writer Podcast.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, great to have you back on, Andre, again, and welcoming a new face and person to the podcast as well. And we will get to the story pretty soon. Well, how about right now? The point is that Andre has started picking up and publishing other authors in addition to his own ever fast growing body of work. And RJ Clark is the first, correct?
So technically RJ is our fifth author, but
Oh,
he's our first author who I should say is someone we don't actually or didn't know
okay.
already.
All right. Gotcha. We'll get to that story and how that happened, but that's great. And the title of RJ's book is Staycation, uh, which sounds like a very intriguing title right there alone. I think something that became a popularized term during the pandemic and kind of around that, but was probably goes way back, who knows. But let's start just getting to know RJ a little bit. RJ, could you just tell us a little bit about where you're from and how long you've been writing, and then we'll get into the book and talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I am a New York native. I've lived in all five boroughs. I was born in New York City. Pretty much an East Coast boy. I did spend a very small amount of time on the West Coast. Loved it, but everything for me was back home in New York, so I came back and currently live in Asbury Park, New Jersey, home of the boss, Bruce Springsteen. It's hard to go anywhere without running into the ghost of the boss down here, which is awesome. It's very artsy. It's very music. There's a lot of writing, artists. It's great. It's a very creative environment. I love being down here.
That's great. How long have you been writing?
Honestly, it's the first thing I remember doing as a child was picking
Wow.
up a pen and writing. A lot of kids scribbled. I doodled stories. I wrote really, really awful sequels to things I liked. The Wolfman Part Two, Frankenstein meets the Wolfman Part Three. They were terrible, but they were great exercises in writing. As a kid, I still have some of them in a box. They're fantastic. I also did like this really long A Team serial when the A Team was really popular in the 80s, and I'm totally dating myself right now. But I went on a whole tangent with that. But it was the first thing I remember wanting to do. So I was young, and it's been a passion that never really left.
Sounds great. And it sounds like there's a little horror or action theme, sort of what I'm picking up on.
Yeah, it was, the Universal monsters were my first love. Bela Lugosi and Dracula. That was hands down my absolute favorite. My parents, God bless them, were very supportive in my Dracula escapades, buying me anything and everything that had Lugosi or Dracula on it, encouraging it. And my first Broadway show was actually Dracula with Frank Langella in I think 1977 or 78, and I was really young. And as a kid, I couldn't understand how they killed Dracula at the end, and he comes out for a curtain call bow. And my parents kept trying to explain it to me for years until I was a little bit older and could understand live theater. And they were actors. He wasn't really Dracula. But of course, he's in Langella's in the John Badham Dracula movie. So a couple years later, I'm like, but he's there. He is Dracula. What do you mean he's an actor? No, he's Dracula. See? So that was a whole nother thing. But yeah, horror has been in my blood since writing. Basically, they seem to have blossomed at the same time, and nobody knows where it came from. Nobody in my family can figure it out. But we like what we like.
Yeah. And not disturbed by this, didn't cause any sleepless nights, or did you enjoy the sleepless nights?
I mostly enjoyed the Sleepless Nights. There were only two movies as a kid, and I say this and people will scream going child abuse. But I saw The Exorcist as a kid and I made it till her head spun, and that was it for me. And I had to sleep with the lamp on for like a week. And I saw Alien, the Ridley Scott movie, in the theater, which again, I was real little. I was like 77, 78, so I was like five.
Wow.
I was loving it until the chest burster scene, and then I spent the rest of the movie in the arcade. Very different times. I was unsupervised in the arcade while
Right.
the rest of my family was watching the rest of Alien, which I finally saw, a few years later before Aliens came out. But I did like the Sleepless Nights.
That's great. Well, I'm right there with you on The Exorcist. I think it was about 3 sleepless nights, and I was in college, so that'll date me. And Aliens too. But yeah, that was two great movies, that's for sure. Wow. So before we get to Andre and the whole connection there, just did all your writing then lean in that direction? And could you walk us through? Did you start with short stories? Did you start with a novel?
Yeah, definitely. I focused on writing for, I feel like my life has gone in like these 10-year adventures where I've been doing different things for a decade. And for the first early part of my life, all the way up till college, everything for me was writing. I thought that's what I was going to end up doing somehow with my life. Even growing up in New York, I didn't necessarily think that you could make a living as a novelist or anything like that, but it was still just something that I always felt a calling to do, and horror was my love. So I kept, trying to come up with my take on the world, my view of the world, some short stories. Didn't really try tackling a novel till probably my late 20s or so, and I hit that halfway point and just couldn't finish it. And I was like, all right, so maybe books are not for me, maybe this is not what I meant to do. Then theater came along, and I did a long tangent as a performer, a professional performer. Still writing here and there, but my main focus at that point became being a singer, actor, musical theater performer. Um, and it took a little while for me to come back around and say, no, that's not what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be doing the writing thing. And it was as I was looking down the barrel of 50, I realized one of my bucket list goals was to write a novel. And I was like, well, I've got 4 years to write something. Let me see what I can do. So in those 4 years, I wrote 5 novels, and Staycation was, I think, the third. I think it was the third in that set, and it was just before the pandemic that I finished Staycation. It was my last pre-pandemic novel. The pandemic novels are a little odd, but that's a whole nother story. But yeah, Staycation was it was a blast, and I think I found my my voice for horror. I think I found my way to tell a horror story. I mean, that's really the trick of it, is to, what can you bring to the table that hasn't been done 6 million times? And for a long time, I couldn't figure out what that was. I didn't see that I was the ingredient. It's what I can bring to the table is what I can do. Just how I see the world, just how I describe the world, and just the situations that pop into my brain. But it took a long time and a lot of maturity to kind of realize that I can take even situations that have been done before, but because it's going through my filter, it's new. It's completely different, and that took a lot of pressure off. Everybody wants to sit down to write the next Dracula or the next Frankenstein, the next immortal classic, or be the next Stephen King. But at the end of the day, I just want to tell a good story. I want people to just really dig the story, dig the characters, and have a great time with what I'm doing, because I have a blast writing. It is one of the most fun things in the world to me. So I want readers to experience that and get that same joy that I get in creating it and reading it.
Well, before we get to the story of Staycation, I just want to ask Andre. I mean, doesn't that resonate with you? I assume what RJ's explanation about what bringing your own self to the table is the key. And I know I had a sort of epiphany at some point along the same lines.
Absolutely. I mean, what they say, there's only like 7 storylines that exist, and we all just sort of put our own twist on it. So I absolutely, RJ's right on the money with that.
Yep. Absolutely. All right. So out of those 5 novels, was Staycation immediately your favorite? Was that something that just sort of stuck with you more than the others, or how did that work?
It's kind of funny because the other stories come to me, and there's no specific genre. Horror is my first love, but everything that comes to me isn't first a horror story. You can turn anything into a horror story, add the right ingredients. Um, but it still felt like a dirty secret to me because I had written these lofty literary wannabe novels that I'm very proud of. The writing's very good, but they're very different from what I did with Staycation. With Staycation, I took off every restriction that I would impose on myself as far as language, story, going as far as I could go, and then, instead of pulling back, going just a little bit further. How dark and twisted can I make this? So it was for a little bit, not that sense of, oh my God, I did a porno when I was in my teen, and when I was 18 in college, and I don't never want anybody to see this. But it felt kind of almost embarrassing for a little while until I really sat down and reread it and was like, this is actually quite good. I'm very proud of this book. And I didn't realize at the time how much it all had come together and the fun that I had writing it, the twist worked. I needed that little bit of a break to do something else and come back to it to realize I really had nailed the head on that one. So then I became very proud of it, and it is probably my most favorite of the six so far.
And how did you try to get out there and pitch it traditionally, look for an agent? What was your approach or thinking?
Do you want to tackle the first part of this one, Andre? it,
Well, well, I don't even, I don't, I guess I don't know, RJ. How did you find us?
so it was interesting. My first novel, the first one I wrote as I was looking down 50 is a coming of age story. And I did pitch Mad on Twitter and found a small publisher that was interested in it, and I decided to go with them for it because I was like, I don't know if anybody else is going to like this. They don't want me to change a lot, so let's just do it. And long story short, the editor there ended up leaving, and I kind of went with him under the guise that we would try to do a literary agent thing, which is ultimately when it ended up happening. My novel got him a position as a literary agent. They got him a job as a literary agent based on the strength of my story, my book. They created a department. It was all really cool. The book ended up not selling, but right when all of that was happening, you met him, I think, at Fan Expo. And that was one of the things he kind of dangled in front of me, going, oh, I have this great horror publisher that you could talk to as well. We just started talking. It seems like it could be a good fit. And then he had me pitch to you. And then literally right after you guys started reading it, I had to sign a contract, and they're like, so everything goes through us now. And then they wouldn't let me give Andre the book. Andre and Natasha both were so enthusiastic about it, and it broke my heart because they were like, well, you can't give it to them. And I was like, but why did you have me give it to them in the first place if at the end of the day now you're not going to let them have it? I was like, and you're not the one talking to them, me. So like, I'm going to look like the a-hole, not you. I'm like, fantastic. So that was actually how we
Okay.
ended up meeting.
Okay.
Per
I
se.
guess I never knew that part of the story. All I know is you submitted Staycation to us. We read it. I fell in love with it. So let me say, I'm a very slow reader when it comes to physically reading a book. I'm happy to get through like 5 pages in a session, and I don't know, my mind wanders. I'm more of an audio person. But with Staycation, like once I got to about the 40% mark, I couldn't stop. Like I had to finish the book. I was so engrossed by it. And Natasha, she doesn't read horror, like that's not her jam at all, but even she was into the book. And I'm like, honestly, this is probably the best horror book I've read in a long time by someone not named Stephen King. So I'm like, and so we had launched our publishing house officially as an LLC in 2019. We'd already been publishing my books for 3 years before that, and before we made that decision, hey, let's start growing our business, let's start publishing others. Then Staycation came into our inbox. I'm like, oh, this is a sign from the heavens. This is our book. Yeah, and then everything fell through with the agent and all that. And so I keep a daily planner. I have every year, every week. I flip the page. I have my to-do list, And the top of my to-do list for probably 2 to 3 years, it just said RJ Clark. I'm like, I'm going to look like every couple months. I'm just going to look. I'm going to see if Staycation is out there in the world. If it's not, I'm going to reach back out to him at some point. So yeah, fast forward to the beginning of this year, I finally, all motivated with my New Year's resolutions. I'm like, you know what, whatever. I'm going to reach out to RJ, see what's going on with Staycation. And I find out he actually emailed us like the year before, and we never got that email for whatever reason.
Wow.
But yeah, it all ended up working out.
The timing was amazing, as you know, Andre. Like I was literally driving. It was over Christmas. It was like right after
Yeah.
Christmas, right before New Year's that week. And I do live accessibility for theater, so I was on my way to a fantastic production of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, which I was getting working as much as I love the music. Not a great production. And I was really thinking about everything that I'd gone through those last 4 years or so. Just, I was like, all right, I've written 6 books. I had an agent, maybe not the best agent. I was like, it didn't go anywhere. Nothing sold. Like maybe I was wrong. Maybe this wasn't what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. I was like, how could I have misfired again? Like I don't know. I have no ideas. I'm broken. I don't feel like writing. Literally, hands to the heavens. I was stopped at a red light, pulled, 4 cars back, so I was safe. Pulled up my email, and there was an email from Andre, and you can only see like the first 3 lines in preview, and I almost drove off the road. I was like, what? What? Pulled into a gas station, read the entire email, and talk about like signs, like you were saying. I was like, okay, I get it. All right, I'm not going to give up writing. Okay. Immediately wrote Andre back from the gas station, and everything just turned around.
Wow. And when was that? How long ago?
December, just this past
Okay.
December. So
Wow.
December
Yeah,
2022, and yeah,
that's
officially
great.
January. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Amazing. What a great story. I love that. Yeah, that's fantastic. All right, give us a little window into Staycation. Where's it set? And without spoiling anything, give us the overall premise.
Yeah. So how to describe Staycation without spoiling anything? Essentially, it's a family stay-at-home vacation, for an undetermined amount of time, somewhere in the New York City area in the Bronx, in a typical suburban house, in a suburban household. And immediately from the get-go, you get the vibe that something's off, and it's just a question of what and where. And you are warned at the beginning of the novel that there are rules to the game of Staycation, which is also a big clue. And yeah, it's just watching everything suddenly go off the rails and going back, for a second read to see all the things you missed the first time. And yeah, it's a blast. There's a lot happening even when it seems like there's not.
Hmm. That sounds intriguing for sure. Wow. Yeah, very good. So did Andre talk a little bit about how you approached this? Did you go through a little bit of an editorial process? Was there some back and forth on some changes, or was it ready to go?
So once we like agreed to our terms and everything, RJ went back through, made some changes, just some things he wanted to tweak. At that point, I went through the manuscript more with an editor's eye, just tightening sentences, cutting out filler words, things like that. So I did a couple rounds of that type of editing myself, and then I sent it to an editor we work with, just to have another set of eyes on it and get it all polished up. But I mean, honestly, like the book, the story itself didn't really need much work. The story was very strong. The twists were good. So yeah, because of that, we were able to release it so fast. Like I think we signed the contract in January and we released in June 27th. I mean, with the manuscript good to go, it was just a matter of getting the cover together and the whole sort of book package with the blurb and line up some marketing and things like that. Yeah, very very smooth process, but it was nothing new for me. I've been doing that. That was I think the 25th book I've published. So yeah, it was like my systems were in place. I knew exactly what to go and kind of how to set timelines and expectations.
Yeah. I believe I see a copy on the shelf behind RJ. Is that within arm's reach to give us you could even hold it up close to the little zoom camera there, whatever you've got. Yeah. Nice. Pretty happy with that cover, RJ?
Oh, I loved it. Like when I first got the email for it, I thought it was fantastic. It really captured what I saw in my brain for it. Because Andre and I had talked about that. Like of all the things I've written, this was the one I really didn't have a clear idea of what I wanted the cover to look like. Just a very vague idea, and they took my vague idea and turned it into exactly what I wanted. I think we made one tiny change with the blood on the soccer ball, and that was really it. I thought it was pretty perfect first time out.
Great. Wow. And that came out as obviously trade paper and ebook, I assume, obviously.
And hardcover as well.
Hardcover as well.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is that how you do it, Andre? And why?
Yeah. So actually, when I started my my current series that I'm on, the Ariel Lucila series, I actually ended up switching cover designers. So I use it's a company called 100covers.com. So if anyone's looking for a cover designer out there, I highly recommend them. They charge $100 as their base plan, so they're very affordable. But I do pay for the higher plan, and they include a hardcover with that. So I figured, why not? It's just another way to offer the product to people who prefer hardcovers. So yeah, we have ebook, paperback, hardcover, and hopefully, if the book sells well, we'll look into audio as well.
Yeah, make it happen. Yeah, that's great. How is it doing?
I mean, we're still less than a month, but I'm very pleased. I think we're averaging around 3 to 4 sales a day of Staycation, which, I mean, brand new book, brand new author, I'll take it.
You and me both.
Yeah.
It's all perspective. Like a copy of a Stephen King book selling 100 copies is a dead, but for me, I'm like 100. Yes, fantastic. Woohoo! Anything over like the family 10 is great for me. So I'm just happy people are finding it and reading it. And I love seeing reviews and blurbs from people I don't know. The people I know are wonderful, but from total strangers, I love hearing their response to the book, which has been positive so far. So
yeah, it's been very well received so far, definitely.
Yeah, I'm very, very pleased. I'm very happy with the reception so far.
Did you go out and get any pre-publication reviews or blurbs, things like that?
It's a little slower than I would have liked. Like response time, I feel like everybody is still in COVID time where, you send an email in May and you get something back in like September. So it seems like the fall, which is a great time for Halloween and the horror conventions, I'll be able to get some more stuff happening with Fangoria and some other places that I think are really good fits. It's just the timing hasn't really worked out quite as much as I would have liked. Like us getting it out in 5 months was so easy and effortless compared to trying to book time to talk to other people about reviewing it or talking about it. I wish everything was as effortless as our publication deal was.
Yeah. And Andre, are you open to folks approaching your company? What's your plan in terms of submissions?
Absolutely. So really our main focus is the time travel genre and horror, because that's what my audience was, as I've been growing it over the years. So that's our main focus if anyone is looking to submit. My wife, we published her first children's book in December. That's something we're still trying to figure out, because that's a whole other beast to figure out. But yeah, I mean, we're always open to obviously sci-fi is kind of similar to time travel. So like we currently have a submission right now. Someone submitted a 6-book series. It's a little more like space opera, I'd say. But if we feel we can reach an audience with it, we're absolutely open to it.
Yeah. Wow. Takes a lot of time. If you get a bunch of submissions coming in, that's going to take some time to sort through.
Yeah, we haven't been bombarded yet. I'm sure that day will come though, and we'll need to, make some decisions here about our day jobs and whatnot.
Yeah. And give us a little update on your stuff, Andre. Where are we, and what's either just come out or on the way?
So I'm all my focus right now is on my current series, that Ariel Lucila. She's a time traveling like spy assassin type character. Book number 4 is with my editor. That's actually my 20th full length novel, so I'll be publishing that sometime this fall.
Wow. And working title on that one?
Yes, Time Roller. It's about a roller coaster that malfunctions and kills some people, so they have to go back in time to figure out what really happened.
That's great. And give us the other titles in the first 3 books.
Okay, let's see. Angel Assassin is book 1. Book 2 is Secrets in the Vault. And book 3 is Dirty Money.
Excellent. Did you get that test anxiety for a second there? Because that always happens.
I did.
I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. She's one of my beta readers. And she was talking about going through Staycation for a second time. And we were just talking about the red herrings and the clues. And we talked about a book that I'd written during the pandemic, which I will always refer to as my wild pandemic novel. And I could not remember the title for the life of me. And it took me like 6 hours or so after of not thinking about to go, oh, that's right. That's what it was. And like, I texted her immediately, but I had that panic of test anxiety going, my God, I wrote this book. It's like 450 pages. What was the title of that damn book? I don't remember. But you made it look so easy. I was like, oh my God, like he really had them down.
Well, they're my recent ones. I think that's why it was a little easier.
Yeah.
Fair
book number 8, quick, Andre, what was the title of book number 8?
Oof,
no, I'm just kidding. Yeah. Yeah. So RJ, what's next for you? What's happening to other books that you've written previously, or do you have something new on the way? Are you in negotiations with Andre on what's next?
Yeah, we've kind of teased the idea of some other Staycation stories, and I'm currently not too far in the process of Staycation 2, and I've pretty much outlined how it would tie into a final Staycation 3. And I've got another horror that I've been toying with for off and on for a few years. It's kind of horror, comedy, satire, and just trying to get all those ingredients just right. And I think I finally figured out the missing ingredients for that. So sticking with horror for a little bit, put some other stuff on the back burner for now. And yeah, seeing where we go next. I'm excited to go back to Staycation and figure out a new way to surprise people and not give you the same thing you've had before, but to give you a little of what you've had before with some new stuff. And I think I've got a good story for you.
That's great. Wow. Excellent. Well, Andre, I mean, just having only met RJ a few minutes ago, it must be, from your perspective as a publisher, a good thing to have somebody who is clearly got it together, very professional, knows what he wants to do. And I mean, you just get that sense he's not just somebody who's just, super desperate, or, it's all about this one book, and that's the prism through which he sees it. He's been a storyteller for a long time, and you could tell.
Absolutely. You can tell by reading Staycation, but yeah, RJ's been just a treat to work with. Because like I said, the 4 other authors we publish, and I include myself and my wife in that. So I guess really 2 others we publish are, they're good friends of ours. So RJ's sort of the first stranger, I guess, is the way we put it, who we've published. So it's like, we don't know what to expect, because I'm good friends with Bernadette. She runs 5 Prints Publishing for romance, and she's published like, I don't know, 50 different authors. And I've heard some horror stories from her. It's like, well, we don't know how this is going to go, but let's just see. Right. The book's good. So we're going to just go for it, see what happens. And yeah, so far, no complaints.
Yeah, that's great.
I'm saving all the surprises for later.
Yeah.
So all the diva moments will come with Staycation 2 and Staycation 3.
Of course, once RJ is a bestseller and an auteur, then he's going to have all his demands for us, I'm sure.
Blood. I want more blood on the cover.
The real horror begins, the real life horror. Yeah. You could write a book maybe about a somebody getting in business with a brand new writer, and it seems to be going well at first, and all of a sudden it goes off the rails, and never mind. Anyway, so we need to get RJ out to Colorado Gold, Andre. I think that's also got to happen.
Yeah, I haven't talked to him about that, but
yeah,
it's always the weekend after Labor Day, RJ.
Okay.
Here in Denver.
Great conference. Great conference.
3-day conference.
Oh, beautiful. It's funny. I used to come out to Denver a lot more often with theater work at the Denver Pack. And I feel like my company has somebody a little bit more local now who's kind of taken over that route. But I used to work at Denver Pack, I would say 4 or 5 times a year between like summer and fall. So I had been out there several times before. And right before the pandemic actually was the last time I was out there. I don't remember the show, but it seems like right now he's got somebody there who's closer, and they don't have to pay the travel to get out there. But I will definitely come back out anyway. I loved my time in Denver. It's a great town.
Awesome. Well, as we wrap up here, guys, I always like to get a book recommendation from each of you. Maybe we'll start with Andre. Just mention a book that you've read recently you want to promote or encourage others to read, a book or a writer.
Sure. I guess since we're talking horror, I recently read a book by a good friend of mine, Andrew Van Wey. Title is Head Like a Hole. I think it's his newest book. I think I read it 3-4 months ago. Really good, very kind of like 80s horror type vibes. And that book's actually really blowing up for him too. So yeah, if you're into horror, definitely give that a look.
Great. RJ.
So I'm still in my Stephen Graham Jones phase. I'm just going back to everything he's published from the beginning to now and rereading everything that he's written this summer. So I just finished book 2 of the Chainsaw trilogy. So I'm all caught up with him right now. But if you've not read Stephen Graham Jones, I highly recommend it, especially No Good Indians. That's a fantastic one, as well as the first 2 books of the Chainsaw trilogy. Absolutely fantastic writing.
Yeah, lots of titles.
I want to get him to, sorry, Marcus, I want to get Stephen to come speak at the RMFW conference because he lives here in Boulder.
Yes, yeah. I've ordered some books for him to sign and the bookstores in Boulder, because I met him out here at BookCon right before the pandemic.
Oh, nice.
And he did a talk. It was a psychological horror, and I'd never read him before. I'd never heard of him before. And I was so impressed with how articulate and how smart he was. And I was like, I have to read this guy's work. Ended up meeting him after, and it was an interesting meeting, to say the least. But I ended up really enjoying his work and have corresponded with him, sat in on different talks of his, and have gotten to do some good Q&As with him. And every time I see that he's doing a signing at that store in Boulder, I always send something over, and he writes just really cool stuff for me to stay in the game about writing and stuff. So I love him, and yes, if you get him out there for something, I will be on the next plane out there, because he's wonderful, and he's just so accessible. And he's really supportive of other writers, which it's surprising how many other writers are not, and especially somebody of his, I want to use the word caliber. I think it's fair. He's definitely
big time.
He's good. I mean, he's just the way he uses words. Yeah, it's a lesson.
Yeah, I endorse all of that. I got to actually be on a panel with him years ago, and just 2 other people and myself, and it was such an honor. And what a prince of a guy, a true literary citizen. He was also interviewed in Seattle in March at AWP. And again, just so down to earth and a real role model for anybody, whoever might get to that situation. Remember how to behave when you're at the top or near.
Yes. For sure.
Yeah. Yep. Well, RJ Clark and Andre Gonzalez, thank you so much for your time today. Thanks for jumping on the podcast. And good luck with all your endeavors.
Thank you so much, Mark. It was a pleasure. It was so nice to meet you. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, thank you, Mark. I will see you soon at the conference.
You bet.